Good evening. Another great crowd. We're so thankful for that. No pressure, Taft. But we got a good crowd for not for Taft. We got a good crowd for Jesus tonight, which is phenomenal. Phenomenal. We are so thankful that each and every one of you are here. If you're just joining us for our summer series this year, welcome to Summer Series. This is the second one. And tonight we have a very special guest speaker. I've already let the cat out of the bag a little bit, who Bruce is going to be introducing to us here in just a moment. But before we do that, we're going to have a couple of announcements, some prayer requests. We've got a few here. Then we're going to have a word of prayer. Then Howard will dismiss everybody 6th grade and under to their classes. And then we will have this evening's guest speaker for everybody else. So let's go ahead and get to some of these announcements first, and then we'll do some prayer requests here. First off, as a quick reminder, we have Friday night F&F coming up for the youth group. That's on Friday. I'm assuming that's at the usual time, correct? Where's Tyler? Is he still in the meeting? Okay, I believe that's at the usual time. See Tyler for more info. That's fun to say. I can just point you to Tyler, and I don't have to worry about it. And we also have camp coming up. Coming up this Sunday, actually. Coming up, we're going to start with junior camp, and then we'll go into senior camp. If you want to go to camp and you haven't signed up yet or paid the cost to go to camp, it's not too late. You can still do so. Please go see Tyler or Dayon. And they'll let you know everything that you need to know. So it's $35 in case you didn't know. But if you need help and you can't quite cover that cost, let us know, and we'll make sure you get to go. Because we've had a lot of you be very, very generous in your donations for kids getting to go to camp. And we're so very thankful. We were just talking in the meeting about how generous of a church we have. It always warms our hearts to see how generous our members are. And if you would like to pay for a kid to go to camp, you can still do so. It is not too late for that either. Just when you turn in your check, just make sure, if you pay in check, just make sure you write for camp in the memo, and it'll get where it needs to go. Just earmark it, and we'll make sure it is used for that. We have the 39ers meal tomorrow at noon. So let's make sure if you're available tomorrow at noon, you meet here at the building in the small auditorium. It's going to be a great meal and a great time. So please keep that in mind. And then don't forget, after tonight we've got 6 more weeks of guest speakers on our topic, the miracles of Jesus. Okay, so let's go ahead and go into some prayer requests now. We had a quick write-in prayer request from Vanna. She wanted us to pray for a family that received some just devastating news today. But she says, please pray for my friend and high school classmate Ronnie Daniels and his daughter Rebecca as they lost their wife and mother, Brenda Henson Daniels, unexpectedly this morning. So that is... you couldn't devastate that family more with basically anything else. So let's make sure we are praying for the Daniels family as they recover from such a sudden and unexpected loss, and that we pray that God heal them and comfort them and lead them closer to His glory at this time of such hardship. Also, we need to be praying for, as we always are, praying for Wendell. He is still at home. Ronnie and I saw Wendell just a little bit ago, and he's doing okay, but his health still is a very fragile thing, and he has a very hard time getting around his house. So let's make sure we're praying for Wendell. James Van is still in St. Francis Bartlett. Max Connolly was taken to the ER at Baptist this afternoon. He is dehydrated and has an infection. And they are also checking for any other issues. And then we're happy to announce that Larry and Eva McCord placed membership with us Sunday. So the next time you see them, make sure you congratulate them and welcome them. And then finally, finally, the big kind of personal family news that we have for tonight, which is also a prayer request, is Jerry Wallace, our dear brother in Christ and longtime member here at Millington, passed away yesterday. And he was surrounded by his family. And if you're going to go, that's the way to do it. He lived a long, fruitful life, not only loving his family and working hard for them, but serving the Lord as well. So we are praying for the Wallace family and Sandy and everyone connected to it. So all of us really, because we've all lost a family member. But we didn't lose him. He just went home. And we're going to see him again someday. So let's remember that in our prayers. And then if you also remember Stephanie and I are going to be traveling. We're hitting the road tomorrow morning, bright and early, to go to, is it Littlefield or Littleton? Say again? Louisville. I was way off. It's a good thing Stephanie knows where we're going. But we're driving to just outside the Dallas area tomorrow for a speaking engagement I have, and we'll be back Saturday night. So it's a quick turnaround trip, but please be praying for us as we travel. Okay, I think that's just about everything I have. So let's go ahead and have a word of prayer, and then we'll turn it over to Brother Howard. Will you join me? Mighty God, Holy Father, Lord, again we come before you thankful for all the blessings you have given us, all the ways in which you have brightened our lives and pointed us towards you. God, we ask that you be with those that we have mentioned tonight. We ask that you be with Sandy and her family in the loss of Jerry. We ask that you be with James, with Max. We thank you for Larry and Eva joining us here at Millington. We really appreciate that. We ask that you be with the Daniels family, Father, and all those that we haven't mentioned this evening, because there are so many that we could. But you know them better than we ever could, Father. You know their needs and their hurts and their issues and their troubles. And God, we ask that you use those things in their life, whether through healing or through guidance, to point them into a closer relationship with you. Make that the case for all of us, Father. Make us more like you tomorrow than we are today. And in Christ, let me pray. Amen.
You are the salt and the music, and you are the song that I sing. You are the melody, you are the harmony. Praise your name I will bring. You are the Lord of lords, you are the mighty God, you are the King of all kings. So now I give back to you the song that you gave to me. You are the song that I sing. Have a great class.
So I'm here tonight to introduce the speaker. He really doesn't need any introductions. He's been here so many times that he's almost like a regular now. But what I thought I would do is get up and make a public service announcement before he got up. I was going to go over a few words that you might hear and just give you the definition. You know, I live with a young person at my house, so I'm able to help you out. So you might hear the word fire. That's fire. Okay, that means hot, amazing, or just great. you might hear the word cap, C-A-P. That's cap. That means that's a lie. Or you might hear the word dog, D-A-W-G. That means my man, my friend, my dude. Some other words that you might hear are love, mercy, grace, loaves, and fishes, fish. And that's when he's talking about our Jesus. Let me, without any further ado, Taft Ayers.
Yeah, I wait on Bruce before I start saying stuff. When you get a topic to talk about, and when I say this, for real, no cap, you sometimes you get messages that are great. You think, man, that message is fire. Like that message is good, and you're ready, and you're happy when Jared texted you, and you're like, man, my dog, thanks for giving that to me. I'm just trying to go through all of them in my head right now. But to be a part of a church that knows about love and mercy, that means something to me. And tonight we probably will talk about, loaves and fishes. I think I nailed it. All right, I'm trying to be like, y'all know who Harry Mack is. I'm trying to be like that and just go through all the words and cross them off on my list. This church, I said it last year, and I'm going to say it again this year. This church means a lot to me. Now, it means a lot to me because of the past, being a youth minister in Memphis and knowing people and doing stuff, right? It means a lot to me because of my relationship with Ross and getting to go see him today and then saying, hey, man, let's go over there together. That was really cool for me. So I brought a bodyguard tonight with my brother. I was glad to have that. And it also means something to me because when I was here one time on a Sunday, you were having vacation Bible school, and we were talking about the lost sheep. And we did that story, and we had it. And I've got this picture of my son who's now going to the 9th grade. And the pasty white kid with electric red hair. And so he was a little kid. He was sitting in one of these rows. And here's what I love about it. It was a picture of him sitting here on a Sunday morning getting ready to sing. And so you had Wyatt sitting right there. And for some reason, he had on Beats around his neck. So he had on these big headphones, and just having that picture of him all the time has just screamed Millington to me. I don't know where he got those headphones, but he had them when he was here. And so you've always been nice to me and nice to my family. And to have me back is a big deal to me. It's a big deal to me because I'll tell you the truth. In all my years, there's a lot of places that don't have me back. There's a lot of places that say, we love you. Thank you for that message. And I'm like, yeah, awesome. I'm so glad. And then someone will come up to me afterwards and they'll say, did you really mean when you said? I'll say, yes, I did. They're like, all right, see you later. And so it's good for me to be at a place where I can come, talk, attempt to share Jesus, and you keep inviting me back. So I want to tell you thank you from the bottom of my heart, not just preacher talk, like, it's great to be here. Like, for real. It's good for me to be here. Having our 4 kids that God has given us gives me a lot of material. Some of the best comedians I know, and you're like, dude, you're a preacher, not a comedian. But a lot of good comedians I know, they say they love it when they start having all their kids. Because they say, man, this is material. Like, this is material 101 that I can talk about. And when my kid does something stupid or my kid does something ridiculous, I can go into a bit about it. Well, when we started having our kids, as a preacher, I loved it. I loved it because here's what I believe. I believe that they are gifts from God, and they are examples of His love. And you ready for this? They do some jacked up stuff. They do some crazy things. So why would I not talk about it? And I also love telling kids stories because here's what happens. Some of you hear it and say this, I am with you. Like, parenting is hard. In the trenches, it's tough. It's difficult. Others have fountains of wisdom that you can't wait to share. And so I'll say something about where I am right now in the child rearing game. And afterwards, you'll come up and you'll say this, there is hope. It gets better. Or my favorite is the church people. They come up and say this, you ain't seen nothing yet. Like they come up and tell you this is going to be hard. But let's be for real. That should be church. Church should be a place where I can come in and say, dude, I broke it. Like I messed it up. I don't feel good about messing it up, but I messed it up, and somebody should be able to come up to me and say, hey, it gets better. Somebody should be able to come up to me and say, hey, there's a path to redemption, and sucker, you're not on it, but I wasn't on it either, and so let's get on it. It should also be a place where I should be able to go and say, life is over. Life is terrible. I am at the end of my rope, and somebody should come up to me and say this, no, you're not. If you're not dead, it's not too late. That should be the message of this place, and that's the message that I hope that my kids are hearing and that my kids are receiving. So I got to be faithful in preaching that to you tonight. So I love this topic, and I love getting to create different PowerPoints because I like simple ones. I've also been scarred over the years by putting a lot of work into PowerPoints and telling my wife, oh, it's going to be good. I've got this one, it moves and it jumps and it does all these things. Remember those days? And I've got all these ones that they're going to look good. And then I would go to this church and I would turn it in. And I try to be laid back and chill. And I would go and give it to them. It's the wrong font. It doesn't move. And I'm over here like really worried about it. And as I'm worried about it, I'm thinking, Peter did not deal with that in Acts. All right? Jesus, on the Sermon on the Mount, wasn't going, that's the wrong font. Right? Like that's not what would have happened. And so over the years, I have started to say, forget it. But then I remembered that this is a church that always had ones that I could put up there and that would look good. And so I like creating them. And so I did this one on purpose to come up with 5,000, because we're talking tonight about Jesus feeding 5,000. And I should have put, if I was being accurate, should have put 5,000 plus, right? But feeding 5,000, big old deal. But then also I put a sack lunch up there. And I put a sack lunch, as you're going to see on every slide, because that paints a picture for you of what we're going to look at tonight, of what Jesus did with a sack lunch. About what he did with it. And maybe it's a story that you've heard before. Maybe it means a lot to you. It's one thing that we think about with this miracle of Jesus that is mentioned in all 4 Gospels. Okay, and that rocks right along with the only other thing that goes that way is, Jesus and the resurrection. So you look at what he has done, you look at the life of Jesus, and then you look at this appearing in 4 different Gospels. You can find it in 4 different places. And so as we're going to talk about tonight, my goal is to talk about it maybe in a way that you haven't thought of before. Now the story, that we all know in the quick version, is this. Jesus is there, and we're going to get into what there means and all those things, I promise. But Jesus is there, and in this moment, there's a crowd of people that are following Jesus. All right, it's hot, it is popular. There are people that are seeing all of these things. In John's account, John says this, it wasn't faith that made me believe in Jesus. John says it was the miracles and the signs. Like, he just tells the truth. It's the things that he was doing. Y'all know what I'm talking about? When you go somewhere just to kind of see what's going to happen. I had a dude the other day come to my office. I've got an office in Columbia. It's on West 7th Street in an old kind of Victorian-looking home. It's up in the corner. Well, here's what I've learned about my old office up there. It was built back in the day for somebody to be a creeper. Well, here's what I mean. It's a creeper office. You could say it's a corner office with windows, whatever, right? It's a office that's positioned in this house where you can see all down School Street and all down West 7th Street. And in Columbia, it's an office built for nosy people. The reason I know this is that there's some people that work at our company that will now start coming in and be like, hey, and they walk into my office like we're going to talk, like we're going to do some work, like we're going to hang out for a minute. But they'll go right over to my window. And they'll go right over to my window, and I could literally be sitting at my desk bleeding out. I could be at my desk doing a juggling act, and none of it would matter because they're coming into my office to look out at something that's happening on the street almost unapologetically. They want to see, oh, is that a drug bust? Is that undercover popo? Like what is that that's happening right there on the street? Oh, I think I used to go to church with him. Like, there's all the different stuff that's happening out there, and it's unapologetic because they just want to see the action. People wanted to see the action of Jesus. I mean, it was a drawing power. It was the sale, y'all. Well, what I mean by that is it took a while. People couldn't swallow his teachings really hard, John 6 style, where he looks at them and says, do you want to go too? It's because the teaching sounded like cannibalism. It was tough. It was hard. But the things that Jesus did left people going, whoa, this is a show. And if you're uncomfortable with that terminology, I am not trying to say that Jesus was a clown. But what I mean by that is it was something, a show for people to see. It was something for people to see. There was a message that people would look at and see it and say, ooh, that's hard, but he does these things. And so here what we're going to see in this passage, and I want to go to Mark 6 to do it. In Mark chapter 6 is the one that I want to pick tonight from all the different Gospels. So go there with me. Mark chapter 6, verse 30. But here in this one, what happens as we start to look at it is there's a crowd of people that are following along. And the crowd of people are following Jesus. He's done a lot of different things, as we mentioned earlier. But what you're going to find here in Mark chapter 6, verse 30, is that it says this: the apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all that they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going, they did not even have a chance to eat. You've been there, right? I've been hustling. I've been practicing hard. Man, we're in two-a-days. We're in the last quarter of the company. We're doing all these different things, whatever it might be. I've been hustling. I've been grinding. I've been going hard. Man, I even forgot to eat. You had days like that? Oh, you forgot to eat. And some of you are saying, nope. My body reminds me that it's eating time. But you've been there before where you've hustled so hard and you forget to eat. And it says they were so busy coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat. And he said to them, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. Here's what I want to talk about. The equivalent of what he's saying here is this: hey, take a break and get a little rest. Now, I had a professor in Bible college who told me this. He said, son, sometimes one of the most spiritual things that you can do is take a nap. And when he said that, he was telling me you can go hard. And you can do a lot, but sometimes one of the most spiritual things you can do is take a nap, and you can hit that reset button and you can rest. He didn't agree with that when I put it to the test, when I took his class the next semester, and I'm asleep, and he's like, arise ye that sleepeth. That's the worst phone call to get from a professor. But what he was saying is, sometimes you got to listen. You got to listen to your body. You got to listen to your rhythm. And we get so caught up in doing all this work and hustling and trying to make it. And I heard a preacher say one time, somebody told him, they said, we're afraid that you're going to burn out. We're afraid that you're going to burn out from everything that you're doing. And his response to the lady at church was this: man, I would rather burn out than rust out. And what he was saying is, I'd rather burn out than rust out. You know what I'm talking about? I'd rather burn out by doing too much work than rust out from doing nothing. Either one, if you do either one of those, guess what? The key word there is out. It means you don't have any more. It means you don't have anything left. And when I don't have anything left, newsflash, I'm not useful. I'm not useful to my fam. I'm not useful to my job. I'm not useful to my friends. I cannot pour from a cup that is empty. I can't do it. And that's not Taft talk. That's not motivation 101. That's Bible. I can't do it. I can't pour from something that is empty. And you know what happens a lot of times? When we're doing ministry of any kind, it can be professional ministry where you get a check and you work for a church. We all know of situations like that. But it all can also be doing my daily ministry. If I am doing ministry, hear me right here. If I am doing ministry that is good, I will get tired. When I meet the guy who works with a church and he's like, cakewalk, easiest job in the world. Number one, I'm like this: hey, let's move before the lightning hits him, okay? Because he's not being faithful in his job. He's not doing it right. Because you got to go hard, I think, if you're going to be effective and if you're going to do it the right way. But then also, here's what happens. We do not pause and stop and realize that if I don't take a break and get some rest, I'm not going to be able to participate in the things that are awesome and powerful to follow. I've got to pause, I've got to take a break, and I've got to get rest, because here's what happens. Some of the greatest moral failures have come in my life from burnout. Some of the greatest moments where I have dropped the ball have happened in my life. And you know what happens? I want y'all to picture this. Let's say I got this huge ball, and it's this huge ball that I've been holding, and I've been holding it faithfully. We can even say this. I read Revelation 2:10 one time, and I decided I was going to hold this ball until the point of death so that I could receive a crown of life. okay? And I'm being funny here, but I'm holding this ball, and my job is to hold the ball. And then one day, I drop the ball. And I drop the ball, and it's loud. We know this illustration. We know this metaphor. When somebody drops the ball, there's failure. And when I drop the ball and it's loud, you know what everybody does? Everybody, self-included, does this. Ooh, ball dropper, this is bad. There's a mess. There's a mess we got to clean up because the ball dropped. And now we got to preach sermons about why you don't drop the ball. And now we got to talk to people about, I'd like to put on the prayer list. Taft is going through some stuff because he dropped the ball. And be with his wife because the ball was dropped. And it sounds like I'm being funny. Sorry, it's just the way I talk. But I'm being serious because here's what happens. We focus on the ball dropping. What we don't focus on is how heavy the ball got. What we don't do is listen to people that are saying, this is heavy. I need a break. This is heavy. I need to rest. This is heavy because I'm hurting. And you know what I do sometimes? I go up to those people with my Jesus cape on, coming in like, hey, coming in here like I'm this spiritual person. You know what I say? Pray about it. Now, I love prayer as much as you do, I think. I don't fully understand the way it works, and you know what's awesome about that? I don't have to, right? Like, I love prayer. I'm all about it. Here's what I do know. It's not a Band-Aid, and it's not something that I just slap on a hard life. And so there have been times in my life where I've said to somebody, but you need to just pray about it. You just need to pray about it, do it. And it's almost like this. The person looking at you is thinking, I hadn't thought about that. Thanks. Oh, prayer, that's it? But I'm guilty of saying that when maybe what I need to tell them is this. Take a break. Take a break. Get a little rest. Now, you know what's money in the bank? Take a break. Get a little rest. And get prayed up. Like, that's better, right? Than to tell somebody, just pray your way through it. And so when I look at this, I see something in Jesus who says here to them straight up. He says, we're busy. You're not eating. You're not taking care of yourself. Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get a little rest. So they go away by themselves into a boat. And when it says that they go away by themselves into a boat, and they go to do this, and here's what happens. As there's this move and as there's this change for them, they go to a solitary place. But many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. The first thing that I've got to do is that I've got to take a break and I've got to get a little rest. And you know what? The world's going to happen. Things are going to go on. Things are going to move. Things are going to unfold. But I want to take a break. I want to get rest. I want to unplug. But then when I do this, as I take a moment to do that, the next thing that's going to happen is I'm going to try to see what it looks like to have the heart of Jesus. And what we have on our next slide here is this. As he sees the people, and he sees the people without somebody to lead them, it reads like this. He sees them like sheep without a shepherd, and his heart breaks. His heart breaks because he sees people that are in need. And I think sometimes we're not able to see those things because here's what happens. We don't take the rest that we're supposed to take. And so my vision, I'm not able to look and see the things and have the vision that I'm supposed to see because I've been so busy, because in my life I'm doing things just to stay busy, just to stay driven, just to stay locked in. And what we see take place right here is we see Jesus notice the needs of the people. And he notices the needs of the people, and he realizes here in this moment his heart breaks because he says, I'm going to have to attend these needs. I'm going to have to attend these needs and see what it is that they want and that they need. I got a question for you. When's the last time that you took a little bit of rest, that you backed up, and when you took a little rest and you backed up, you got a spiritual vision? And I don't mean spiritual vision like it came down and I saw it and I felt it and I was like, go here and do that and, take 3 steps to the left. Wouldn't that be awesome if you got all those things? That's not what I mean. But I mean, you were able to recalibrate your vision. You were able to start to see things the way that Jesus would want you to see them. And you took a break, you got some rest, and then as you did this, you started to see different things of what people needed, and then you went, crazy thought, and asked people. When's the last time the church went to the community and went to people outside the walls and said this, what do you need? Now, a lot of times what happens is we sing songs like this. There's a fountain free, 'tis for you and me. And you know what? Come everybody who's feeling lucky. Come everybody who can make it. If you find the fountain, blessed are those that find it. We're glad that you came in and found Jesus today. As opposed to, hey, are people in this community thirsty? Are people outside these walls? Are those people in need? Are those people that have needs, that need something, that want something in their lives? And this is what happens here. Jesus' heart breaks. And his heart breaks that the people don't have somebody to lead them. And you know what he doesn't do here? He doesn't treat them as interruptions. Can I say that again? He doesn't treat them as interruptions. And have you ever had people in your life that just straight up interrupted you? I don't mean when you're in just a conversation and somebody butts in, but I'm talking about people that are interruptions and you've treated them like it. You've treated them like it in the sense of, here I am and I'm doing something, and they swoop in and they ask you something, and you hit them with this, what? And then in 2 more seconds, you're looking like, love you so much, Oh, I hate it, all right? Because there are people that will come into my life, and I tell them that they matter. I tell them that they're important. But you know what I do? I wind up making them walk away with their tail between their legs like there's some kind of interruption. My kids come to me, and they ask me questions. And I would love to tell you that I'm the most attentive dad in the world. But I don't like lying, to especially large groups of people. And I love to tell you that when they come to me, I'm like, what do you need? What do you need? Here I am. Whatever it is, I got you. Whatever you need. Here's what happens. A lot of times my kids come up to me, let me be on an iPad. If I'm on an iPad, I'm doing some stuff, right? And I'm probably doing some stuff for the fam. Like I'm doing some stuff for us. I'm trying to take care of business for everybody so that bills get paid, so that everybody's taken care of going from point A to point B. And as I'm there doing that, all of a sudden, I feel a tug on my hip. I got one kid that likes to bump my elbow. And I'm like, what do you want me to do, drop the iPad? But they come up with all of these different things. And I will turn and I will look at them, and I won't whack them with the iPad yet. But I'll turn and say this, what's the deal? Do you see that I'm doing something? What do you need? And they'll ask me a question, and my usual response to them, full confession here, my usual way that I do things is this. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine, whatever it is. And you know what I'm trying to do? Get back on the iPad. If I'm on my phone, oh, it's super important. Right? Oh, next level important. So if I'm locked in on the screen, I'm doing stuff, and then my daughter comes in, Daddy, and I'm like, yeah, baby, and she'll ask me a question, but yeah, it's fine, yeah, that's cool, yes, I said it's fine, and then I go back. But recently I did that. My son and my daughter gave them a response. They turned to each other, and here's what they say. He doesn't mean it. And when she said he doesn't mean it, it kind of hit me like, what does she mean? What do you mean I don't mean it? And she turns and she looks at him and she says this, when he's on that thing, he never does. You want to talk about breaking my heart? You want to talk about putting me in check? Like, hey, if he just said yes to you right now, guess what? He doesn't mean it. You're fixing to get in trouble, all right, because he's not paying attention. What she's saying there, right there in that moment is, this is what it's like when he ignores us. And in those moments, that's me treating those gifts of God that I talked about earlier as interruptions. That's me treating a gift of God like they're an interruption. And you know what? I am not supposed to treat people like interruptions. I'm supposed to have a heart that breaks for the things that Jesus' heart broke for. And Jesus' heart breaks for those people that don't have anybody to lead them. His heart breaks for those that are there, wandering around, needing somebody here. Doesn't say you're interrupting me. Doesn't say I'm too busy. Doesn't say, hey, newsflash, I went away to get a little bit of rest. It says that his heart breaks. And so after his heart breaks for them, he begins to teach them many things. By this time, it says that it was late in the day, so his disciples came to him. This is a remote place, they said, and it's already very late. Send the people away so that they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. In one of the translations, in one of the different accounts, Jesus is talking and he speaks to Philip. And when he speaks to Philip, you may remember this, he says to him, Philip, who was from that area, he says to him, where are we going to go and get things for them to eat? Basically, hey, you're from here, what are the good restaurants, right? Like, where are we going to go? We're going to buy the things for them to eat. And he says, we're not going to be able to do that. There's no way that we're going to be able to do that. We don't have enough money to do this. He gets the calculator out, one of the least spiritual things we can do sometimes. But he gets that out. And there's this question that takes place here. And what happens in this moment is when he says, this is a remote place, it's very late, send the people away so that they can go to the surrounding countryside villages, buy themselves something to eat. And he says this, you give them something to eat. They said to him, that would take more than half a year's wages. Are we going to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat? And then Jesus does this next part. He does what I like to call taking inventory. He takes inventory, and here's what he says. How many loaves do you have? Go and see. What Jesus does here is that he doesn't just immediately say, we're not going to be able to do this. He takes an inventory. And the way that I like to phrase this in my life is I like to say it like this. What are we working with here? And my wife knows when I say the question, what are we working with here, that I'm fixing to do something. If I say, what are we working with here, she'll go, oh, no. All right, because the man that doesn't do very much is about to try to do a lot. And so when I say, what are we working with here? She's like, kids, everybody buckle up. We may not have the finances for this, but dad's about to go Chevy Chase on him. Like dad's about to go try and do something big and huge. And whoop, hold on, here he goes. Jesus takes inventory. He takes inventory and says this, like if you've ever been to the Varsity in Atlanta, what do you have? What do you have? He looks here and he says this, what do we have? Like what do we got? And they give him an inventory. What they do here is they make a spiritual assessment. They make a physical assessment. And they say, hey, you're going to try to do this. We don't have enough to do it. And Jesus says, okay, already. What's the count? How many loaves do you have? Go and see. Jesus hits them with this. Hey, we're talking about problems here. I'm trying to get us to a solution. You been there before at work? They always come in and put problems on your desk. They never come in with a solution. And you're like, hey, it's cool you brought me 5 problems. Could you bring one solution? Right? Jesus here in this moment says, take some inventory. Let's go find out. Let's go find out what we got. And so the report that they give him, that they say to him is this. When they found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Then Jesus directed them to all the people to go and sit down in groups on the green grass. Now this goes against the way that they would have done things. If it was just healing time, if it was time for them to do this, they would have done kind of a run-through system. All right? Have everybody walk through and come on through. Jesus says, go have a seat. Go have a seat there. It says there's a lot of grass here. Go have a seat. And this would be the equivalent of me standing up before you today and saying, guys, I came tonight to bring you guys some food. And I'm going to take care of you tonight. And instead of DoorDash coming in, I've mentioned that twice tonight, you can tell I'm hungry. But instead of DoorDash coming in, or me saying, I've got pizzas for everybody in the fellowship hall, if I stood up before all of you and said this, guys, I want you tonight that I came to feed the Millington Church, and I have in my hands a bagel. Taft, what do you mean? Like somebody in the cool Millington logo shirts are about to come down the aisles handing out bagels? No, I have a bagel. I've got a bagel in my hand, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to pray, and we'll pass it out. I would say to you, let's pray, and you be doing this number. What? What's he talking about? He's going to feed all of us with that bagel? Like, you might not even bow your head. You might think, dude, he's lost it. I don't know what this guy is fixing to do. But he takes an inventory. And then he takes an inventory here, and here's what happens. Jesus directs them, all of them, to sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups, it says, of hundreds and fifties. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate, and they were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 baskets full of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of the men who had eaten was 5,000. Again, if we start getting into the calculator here, we start getting into the calculator of how many people there were. We start looking at the number 5,000, and we start thinking about that number being the number that was used to describe a Roman legion. Like a big number here that means a lot to a lot of people. But you start talking about 5,000 dudes, and you start thinking about that. Start adding on women and children. Guys, we could easily, in today's world, get that up to 20K. I mean, we could easily get there when you start to look at all these people that this touched. You start to look at what Jesus did, but there's something really important in here, I think, where it says this. It says that when they were able to do this and when this took place, it says that they ate their fill. What it means by that is that it wasn't, hey, I'm going to feed everybody with a bagel tonight, and I'm going to slice it up here, and I would slice it so thin that you could see through it, and be like, you get a nibble, you get a nibble, you get a nibble. That's not the deal. The deal is there was stuff for everybody from this small amount. Oh, and guess what? And then they had leftovers galore. You ever been to somebody's house and you ate nice, and then you couldn't move anymore? And then she's like, honey, you're taking this home. And came in with bunches for you to take home. And you're like, all right, we'll keep the party going tomorrow at lunch. I love this meatloaf sandwich. I am just ready for whatever's going to come next. This here is not Jesus just giving them a little bit. This is Jesus doing something so powerful for them so that they could eat their fill. And the reason that I like to say this to people is there's a psalm that talks about come and taste and see that the Lord is good. I don't know if you listen to Christian music regularly, but my 2 favorite versions of that song are from, if you haven't listened to Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir, do Taste and See. I want you to go home tonight, put that into the Google machine, all right? And I want you to listen to that, all right? I want you to listen to Taste and See. I want you to listen to it by Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir. And then if that's not your speed, I want you to listen to it by a group called Shane and Shane, all right? If you know Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir, that's one really cool culture of singing praise and worship songs. And then Shane and Shane are 2 dudes with a guitar singing in a different version. But it makes it come to light because it's such an invitation. It's such an invitation of saying, come taste and see that the Lord is good. Come taste and see. It's this invitation of somebody to come in and be nourished, of somebody to come in and see that what we have in here is good. And it's the same thing here of saying this, come and get full. Come and eat your fill. And guess what? You'll also have something to take home afterwards. Jerry, when you're preaching, if he doesn't preach hope, he's not preaching the gospel. So when I listen to a sermon and I digest truth and I get a message of hope, if I didn't smile at some point during that, or I don't leave the place smiling, though don't hear me wrong, we're supposed to leave the church like this. Everything's okay. Everything is fine. I have no pain in my life. Nothing like that. But I'm saying if there was no hope, if there was nothing presented, I always question if the gospel was preached on a regular basis. And if we're going to try to emulate what Jesus does here by feeding the 5,000, it's not just about some fellowship meal. But it's about saying Jesus can take the little parts of my life, make something big happen in my life, and then watch this. There's going to be more for me to take home. Because if I can go into the world where I am full, I can go into the world where I am nourished. You see where we're going here? If I can go into the world where I'm not starving, I can tell people where they can find it too. But we all know about people that get hangry. We all know about people that have that mixture of hunger and anger. And that's when our nasty comes out. And that's when the horns go up. Man, when I haven't eaten for a while, you know what happens? I may be thinking to myself, I'll get it in a minute, I'll find it in a little while, I'll eat, eventually. But then I can start having a bad mood. I can start being nasty. You know what happens? When Christians aren't full, we go into the world and we give the non-believer all kinds of ammunition. And I give them ammunition like that in my marriage. I give it to them in my parenting style. I give it to them where I work. And maybe what I need to do is stop for a second and say this, hitting the rewind button. Have I gone and taken the rest and taken the break that I need to take? Have I been somebody who has turned in my life and said this, you know what? I've taken that rest, I've taken that break, I've gone on Sabbath, I've done whatever it is I need to do. And in doing so, I've realized that I've got a heart that breaks for the things that break the heart of Jesus. And so here's what's going to happen. The way I treat people is going to be exponentially different. You know what else I'll do? I'll spend a lot more time talking to people about my Jesus than I will talking about my church. Because sometimes I invite people to my church like it's a country club. I love the Florida Gators, and if you don't, that's okay. You can still go to heaven. But a lot of times what I'll do is I'll talk to people about my sports team, and I'll talk to them and get so hyped up about it, and then I'll realize that, you know what, the way I talk about my church kind of sounds like the way I talk to my sports fans. Here's why you need to like this. Here's why we're cool. Here's how we won one time 10 years ago. When I talk to people about my Jesus, what I'm doing is, here's what I'm saying. I've got a heart that breaks for the things that break his. I try to see things the way that he would see them. You know what? The one difference in me and him is that I'm not perfect, but because of him, I don't have to be. And then once I do that, take a rest, have a heart that breaks for the things that break his, then I'm going to take an inventory. I'm going to take an inventory. I'm going to look around and say, what things do I have? What things do I have at my disposal? What tools do I have? What treasures do I have? What do I have in my life that can glorify him? And how can I ask him to multiply it? Years ago, we were working at a church in Milan. And we were working at a church in Milan, and we brought this idea of community outreach to the church. And I was so excited talking to these people about, guys, here's how we can hit the streets. Here's how we can do these things for Jesus. And you know what? One of the things we're going to have to do is we're going to have these opportunities for people to come in. They're going to come in. We're going to need some specific teachers, maybe some tutors. There's going to be some things we're going to have to really think about. And a lady came up to me, and she said, I've been in the public school system my whole life. And all this talk about us teaching people, I am out. She said, because my whole life I've been teaching people, I've been done bad by the system, and if you're in education, you're like, it's summer, stop talking about it, right? But here she was burnt out. And so when I looked at her, I said, hey, that's fine, we've all got different stuff we can do. I'm sorry if in my message I made it sound like you were supposed to be the one to do it, but she was speaking of a place of conviction because there was a piece of her that knew, eventually, after we left that church, we moved on to different places, do different things. They started a tutoring program. She came back around and said, this is something that I need to lead. This is something that I need to do. And I need to take my skills, quit being so bitter about them. And you know what I need to do? I need to give them to God so that they can be used. My buddy, who wasn't a deacon at the time at the church, called me. We lived down the street from each other, and we talk about fun stuff. He goes, I got to tell you something. So-and-so's leading this program. I said, are you kidding me? I said, man, she was so mean, dude. Like, she was like, don't want it. Nothing, ain't buying what you're selling. Like, it was bad. She had that nasty face. And he said, isn't it crazy? These are his words to me. Isn't it crazy what God can do? So you know what she did? She took an inventory. And she said, God, look, I'm burnt out, I'm used up, but I know that you can blow this up. I know that you can do something with it. Tonight, maybe you've got a talent. Maybe you've got to take inventory in your life and say, you know what, I'm good at this. I'm creative. I'm skilled. This is something I can do marginally well that maybe other people don't do. And you know what? I haven't even thought about how I could use it for God. If you have shepherds here who care about the lost, you can approach each one of them with a skill set and say this: help me help people. I've got this thing, and I love to do it. And y'all may think I love to do it so much that I don't come to church or that I'm not plugged in because I love doing this. Well, instead of shaming me for doing this, could you show me how to do this for him? Dude, think about the explosion. People will start talking about you the way they talk about feeding 5,000 people. So you take inventory, you do it, and then here's what happens. Everybody starts to eat their fill. Everybody starts to taste and see. Everybody starts to get excited about the hope that you're supposed to have here. I will never forget growing up at a 1,300-member church in Nashville, getting in trouble. I'll never forget it. It's like I'm scarred or something. Getting in trouble for smiling. And some of you may say this: Taft, there's more to that story. There is more of that story. Well, there is a little bit. I was sitting down the road from my Nana, and I was having a good time. And I hadn't gotten the memo that you can't have a good time in church. I'm just kidding, sort of. And so what I was doing with my buddies, I was just cutting up. I was being a little bit silly. We would sing these songs, and I'd always hear the men with the bass in the 1,300-member church. And my number one goal to hit puberty was one day I'll be able to sing that line. You know, the way those guys sing it. And other songs in this church sounded like parades. And so a lot of times some of the songs they would sing and they would start singing, it sounds like somebody marching down the streets. You know what I would do? I'd start marching. Now I was getting into it. Well, I was a little hyperactive. I was kind of excited. And I remember my Nana, that was understatement of the year, by the way. My Nana looks down at me and she goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm just having a good time. I love this song." I probably said jam, and that was a bad thing to say. But I said, I love this song. And she goes, "You ready? This is not the place to be smiling and cutting up like that." Well, you know what? She was probably right about the cutting up like that part. But I'm afraid too many people have a theology, have fruit in their lives, and they smile everywhere except for when they're with God's people. I smile when we're cutting up in a non-holy way. I smile when I see my boys. They're not my brothers in Christ, but they're my boys. Like, we've been kicking it for years. I'm like, "Hey, hey, hey." And I come in here, "Hello, brother." And the problem in that is I'm trying to raise faithful kids, and they see it. And so you know what they see? Man, this is a guy I used to roll with hard, man, in a life of sin. And we're like this. And then I come in. It's a great day to be in the Lord's house. And I am not making fun of being reverent. I'm not making fun of doing things decent and in order, okay? But here's what I do have a problem with. The times in my life when I don't act like there's something here worthy of excitement. And so many times I've been guilty of saying this: it's about worship, it's about reverence, it's not about entertainment. Because when you hear entertainment, if you're in my age or beyond, entertainment for me back in the day was Chuck E. Cheese or Showbiz Pizza. You go in there to get in a pit of balls, to play some games, get some tickets, and watch those stupid robots do this, all right? And you know what? We went there for entertainment. And so when people say that this place isn't about entertainment, what they're really trying to say is this: it's not about you. We're not worshiping you. There's an audience of one. The problem with the phrase is this: to entertain means, look it up, to engage the mind. You know what I'm afraid of? That I come here all the time and check in and check out, and my mind is not engaged, and I don't even want to start talking about my heart. And here's what happens. You come and you taste and see, and you eat your fill, and you say, "There's so much for us here where we are satisfied, where we are fulfilled, and we have these things met for us because of the power of Jesus Christ." That's why you're studying His miracles. You're studying His miracles because of what John said. You're studying His miracles because John said, "Hey, newsflash, it wasn't faith. I can tell you that. It wasn't faith for me. It was the signs and the wonders. And old man John and the bystander who is retelling this as we have the book of John, at the very end of it, says those words. It was the signs and the wonders. It was the miracles. They were a big deal. And he says the equivalent of this. And that did it for me. Here's what I want to ask you tonight. Are you making a big deal about your faith? And when I ask you if you're making a big deal about your faith, here's what I mean. Are people able to see in your everyday life the fruit that comes from this? So what I'd like to do tonight is to offer prayer for everybody here. And when I say I want to offer a prayer for everybody here, I want to offer a prayer where we really think about a story that we've heard for years. But I want you to make an honest evaluation in your life tonight about stories like this. And if they're just stories that stay in a book and they don't manifest themselves in your life, they don't have any power at all. And I think we all want to have that power, take that power, and distribute that power to people so that they will eat and have their fill. Let's pray. God, thank you for tonight. Thank you for hope. Thank you for hope in words like this and messages like this where we can see something, man, that we've been hearing for a long time, Lord, but that it can give us a new, fresh perspective on how Jesus did it, what he was thinking, what he was feeling, and how his heart was moved to help and to deliver. And God, I ask a prayer tonight for this church, that we will all know, understand, and believe that if we're not dead, it's not too late. And so every day that you give us is a gift. It's a gift of restoration. It's a gift of redemption. And that we have it from you. And God, I just ask tonight that in everything that we do, that we will make a big deal about your Son. It's in his name that we live, in his name that we pray. Amen.
As I dismiss you, I want to, now that he said that prayer and we can get to the cut-up stuff now, I want to share with you the text conversation that Taft and I had last week. I said, hey, Taft, it's Jared. Just texting to make sure you're all good for next week at 7 p.m. If you have a PowerPoint you want to use, you can just email it to me. He says, hey, man, good to go, excited. Shoot me your email address again. I do. And then he says, thanks, dog. And I don't respond because I don't know how to respond to that. No, didn't Taft do a great job? Taft, I know this about Taft. We haven't known each other a long time, but I've heard him speak enough now that I realize that I could ask him to get up here and talk to you about a recipe for chicken noodle soup, and he would get you excited about it because he is good at that. So thank you, Taft, for getting us excited about an opportunity to eat our fill at the foot of our Savior. So thanks for being here tonight. Next week, we're going to have Brother Jeremy Hall from the Bartlett Woods congregation. I will not be here, unfortunately, for that because I will be doing a summer series at another congregation in Tupelo, Mississippi that night. But I know you're going to be deeply blessed by being here next week. Until then, we'll see you. Good night.